So you've probably heard the phrase, if you want to go fast, go at it alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is true in the real estate world. And you might not realize it when you first start learning how to real estate invest, but it is true. This is Jason Muth with Pride Away Stays and Straightforward Short-Term Rentals with another episode, quick take episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast. Pride Away Stays is a great example of how I've partnered up with somebody to actually go far with this business. Our partner here in the Real Estate Law Podcast, Rory Gill, my husband, we partner up on a lot of things, including our real estate endeavors, plus this podcast. In this quick take episode, we are speaking with Deborah Razo. She started something called WREN, W-R-E-N, the Women's Real Estate Network. And it's important for people to feel comfortable partnering, having conversations, talking to one another when you're in this real estate game. People talk about it being a game all the time. I'm not sure why I even use that term, but it kind of is. How far can you go? How long can you play, right? So oftentimes, and I'm male, okay, women might have a hard time feeling heard or comfortable in a situation in a real estate meetup room where there's like 85%, 90% guys, because oftentimes that's who goes to those types of events. So Deborah started up WREN as a way of women to empower each other in the real estate space. I think it's a super great idea. She's not the only one who started groups for women in the real estate world. I know that real estate does have a lot of women that are agents, who are brokers, and there are a lot of female real estate investors. And sometimes you might just need to speak to other women if you're female, right? You know, sometimes you just like doing business with other people and asking questions of folks where there's a certain comfort level that maybe you're not going to get that with a group of guys. So Deborah started this group where they all lift each other up and they all, spitball ideas, they partner up on deals, and they ask legitimate questions to each other that maybe that's the room in which to ask the question. It's really smart. If you're a female and you're listening to this, try to find a women's real estate group near you to go alongside all of the, mixed gender groups that you're going to. If you find that you're really in a male-dominated world, which real estate construction and investing actually can be, sometimes you just need to find other, female leaders and inspire one another. So Deborah Razo is the subject of this Real Estate Law Podcast Quick Take. All of her links are going to be in the episode below if you want to learn more about WREN and more about Deborah. Give it a listen.
So I have been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, but I've only been in real estate about the last 14. I had an accident in my life that kind of changed my direction, which we can talk about if you want to later. But, I was in real estate and I was flipping mainly, right? And so my whole idea or my investment philosophy at that time was to flip for capital, and then I would reinvest the capital and buy and hold for cash flow, because my ultimate goal was cash flowing in, right? I'd read the little purple book, Rich Dad and Poor Dad, and I bought into it all, and that's what I was doing. So I was flipping in California, and at that time, I was reinvesting in single-family homes in Memphis, Tennessee. There was a point at which a bunch of the big capital companies came in and started buying up a lot of the flips. And I was really frustrated in this business. Now, anybody who's ever been in this business a while knows that frustration comes with the territory. It can be a very frustrating business, but I was very frustrated in this business. I couldn't seem to get my next flip. And I just kind of was feeling like, where are the girls? Where are my ladies around me? And it's, no difference. I'd had tons of great, education and stuff from guys, but women look at things a little differently. And I just wanted to surround myself with some ladies. So I actually ended up calling a bunch of friends who were full-time real estate investors, not all flippers. Like there's a couple women that own, storage units. There was a note woman. There was a few of us, and we all had lunch on one Sunday. And we did what women do, which is like, I'm having a problem here. Does anybody have a foundation guy? Or I'm having a legal issue here. Does anybody have a good, tenant attorney? Whatever it was. And at the end of that lunch, I said, I was thinking about doing this quarterly. And somebody goes, no, let's do it, every other month. And sure enough, people started opening up their homes, and there was always wine involved. And, we got together and we told each other our real estate woes. and we helped each other, and then I realized at some point after we had been meeting for a while that there's a whole lot of other women that didn't get the benefit that I was getting from meeting with all these really experienced investors. And I thought, well, maybe I start a meetup. And that's when, WREN really started. I started a meetup in Los Angeles. I took women from that group and we featured them as speakers, and they talked about their business models. And then we started gathering, right? And then a friend of mine came to one of our meetings and said, I want to do one of those in Seattle. And then another friend came, and next thing I know, we had like 11 chapters all over the US right before COVID hit. So, it's just kind of grew because there was this need to see each other succeed, really, and to help each other succeed. And I think that one of the things that I think that is really great about our group is that I think when we see other people like us, I mean, women who are mothers and wives and daughters and taking care of a lot of stuff, doing like what we want to do, it opens up our minds to like, oh, that's possible for me. I can do that. We identify with it. And I know that I've taken advantage of that. I met a woman up at our Seattle chapter who was a developer, and I went up to her and I was like, hey, you don't meet very many women developers. And she was like, well, you're a flipper, right? I used to be a flipper. Developing so much easier. And we had this long conversation, and I came back to LA, and it just opened up that opportunity for me. And the next thing you know, I'm developing fourplexes, right? And I'm like, okay, see, we all have to have our people, around us that can, open up our vision to what's possible for us. And for me, that was other women that were in this business, so yeah, it's been a really great source of inspiration and resources, and those first women that I had our first brunch with, they ended up becoming financial friends. Like, I've led to them, they've led to me, we've JV'd together. And I mean, this business is great for that, like taking other experienced people and putting together your resources and your time and your energy and making money for everyone. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm. You're highlighting like two things that I just really love about the real estate community. And from the outside, it's almost surprising, but everybody, first off, everybody wants to see everybody else succeed. And everybody else has, in my experience, been so open in sharing their histories, their struggles and tips, to the point that it's really a welcoming community, even if we're competing against each other in some aspects of the business or certain deals. The community is very supportive of each other. But also, the community has been really great at kind of inspiring us and making us feel like what we are imagining is possible, or even prodding us to think bigger and bigger. So really happy to hear that, that's been part of your experience. And, you're also talking about a group that underrepresented in the real estate development space, and that's women. And I just kind of want to ask, pretty directly, what are some of the challenges that women in the space are facing? How has your group and how have you helped other women in the space overcome those obstacles?
Well, it's really interesting. I didn't actually bring my stats with me, but, in the long run, women tend to be better investors than men. Sorry to say. Like, we make a lot of really good investment decisions. And I think part of that is because, I don't know, we're kind of natural shoppers. If a woman is like really wanting something, then we know what that good price is and we can like own in on it and grab it. Except when it comes to big ticket items. And, what I found in our community is that, when it comes to big ticket items and there's a lot more involved in it, there's a lack of some confidence that they can do this and they can really make this happen. And so we have a saying in our organization that you can borrow my confidence, right? Our group is a real mix of both experienced and newbie women investors. And I think it really helps not only the newbies, but it also helps, hear another experienced investor go, you could do this. I'll give you my confidence. Go ahead. I looked at the numbers. Do it. You know what I mean? Because I think you just need sometimes that extra encouragement to sign on the line and put in the offer and open escrow, Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a matter of how we do business, and it's a matter of gaining that confidence muscle.
Mhm.
so to speak, so that you can lend it out once you have it.
There's so much I love about this story so far, everything you've said, the support that you're giving to other people where you founded a group with them and have multiple chapters, the confidence you're instilling upon each other, the fact that, again, we've said this many times, it's not a zero-sum game. Like, your success doesn't mean I have to fail. And I think that your group really highlights that. Women in this space, like when we go to a typical meetup, we don't see too many women. It seems to be a lot of guys that come to the meetups, and there are some women that are there. So I understand the need to maybe have your own community and your own space to be able to have those conversations that maybe you don't feel comfortable having in front of some very type A boisterous men that come to these real estate meetups, because we've all been there, right? And they're there. We don't even like speaking up sometimes at these situations where, there's somebody that's controlling the room. And it does not surprise me that women can be better investors than men in this space. Like, it just by no means does this surprise me. I've been to a number of short-term rental conferences lately, and there are a lot of women in that space, which is good to see. And in fact, we had a guest on this podcast, Natalie Palmer, who put on her own conference in Scottsdale this year, Level Up Your Listing, and it was a conference for women. And I got to meet her in person in Nashville recently at another conference. And, I get it. I get why the space is important. So I give you a lot of credit for building this. One other thing that you touched upon early on, with your career, you had an inflection point in your career where this is now kind of your second chapter of your career that you've been doing 13 years, 14 years, whatever you mentioned there, which, I would argue that's a career unto itself. You probably reinvented yourself in this second career a little later on in your life, right? Talk a little bit about that and what that was like. Like all of a sudden you have an identity, and now you have a second identity that you have to build up, which, in us meeting for the first time here, this is all we know you as. But what was it like when you had to switch that identity into this real estate world?
It was a conscious, very direct choice. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and I've had several different businesses, but I think it's about 14 years now. I had an opportunity to start over. There's probably a few people out there listening that have had that kind of opportunity, right? And
Sure.
well, it's the death of a loved one or a divorce, or maybe for some people it was COVID. I don't know, right? Mine was a car accident. I was helping a friend, and we were driving, and a tire blew, and the car went into the dirt, and it rolled driver's side first. So I got the brunt of the impact of the car, and I was rushed to a hospital. And after stitching up my head wound, told that I had a broken neck. And that was the beginning of about a year-long healing journey for my body. And during that time, I had a lot of time to think. And, I think that's what happens when you have those opportunities in your life to kind of pivot. You think, am I really, leading my best life? And I didn't have a bad life. I loved what I did. Was it really my best life? And I was like, you know what? I want to travel the world. I want to show my kids that you can do anything you set your mind to. And I want that passive income, because I need to be able to afford the life I want. And I started literally Googling passive income towards the end of my physical, ordeal. And a lot of things come up, royalties, real estate. Like, I got to get me some of that.
Yeah.
And my brother, who was really kind and taking care of me during that time, he had already been doing a bunch of Tony Robbins stuff. And he said, if you really want to change your life, maybe you should do this after you've healed. And I did. I really realized I had been running my entrepreneurial businesses as actually forming jobs for myself, right? I was an operator in my business. I wasn't the owner of my business, right? I was working it every day. I had created my own job, and I didn't know how to make that shift mindset-wise. So I started doing Tony Robbins events, and man, I drank the Kool-Aid. I can't. I went to all the events, and eventually I actually started working for him. I'm a trainer for him for some of his live events. I come out and I help people make the transitions in their lives that they want. But what I learned along that way is I'm a huge mindset person. Like, you want to change your life and you want to get passive income or whatever it is you're hoping real estate will do for you. It's not going to only be the strategy and the, how to actually implement the skill sets that you need to do it. It's going to be your mindset and how you have to change. It's the two together that are really going to make the change. And I really needed that kind of education to help me make the change into what I wanted. And I'm just really a huge proponent of self-improvement. And I'm a huge proponent in understanding your own mindset and being able to mitigate whatever fears or lacks or anything that you might think you have to achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve. And I still have coaches. I still, along my way, after being out of the rat race for quite some time now, so it's like, you still have to figure out what your next steps are. And a lot of that has to do with mindset.
And there is another Real Estate Law Podcast quick take. For the full episode, please go to YouTube or iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to or heard that quick take. We're also on realestatelawpodcast.com, where you can get all of our episodes and information about the show. On behalf of attorney broker Rory Gill, this is Jason Muth. Thank you for listening.